Welcome to the Reinvent You Show. I'm George.
I'm Azlan. It's about seeing everyday challenges
Differently.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Azlan. With me, I've got George Hilo, and I've prepared for you an introduction. This is AI. So today we're speaking to George Hilo, the founder of EP7, Empowered for Purpose in 7 Steps. George's journey began with a deep curiosity about life, life's meaning, and a passion for helping others. He turned his personal challenges like escaping war and overcoming fear into a mission to inspire change. Now, George's coaching career spans over 15,000 hours.
25,000 now.
25,000 now since
Obviously,
you wrote
that was AI getting old records from several years ago.
Yes. Basically helping individuals and businesses unlock their potential. He is also an author of Cinderella's Secrets, The Untold Story of Ella, which is a bestseller, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's out of print now. I sold all the copies, but I didn't go into print again. So technically it's a bestseller in Australia. But yeah, it was the other books before it, which were lofty thought books that sold a lot. Like they were bestsellers in Australia 5 times over. Yeah.
And he's also the creator of the EP7 Coaching Academy, which basically certifies life coaches in his transformative processes. Beyond coaching, George has also made waves in publishing and music. As we all know, he's a musician with best-selling inspirational books and empowering tracks like Everyday and Hollywood. His mission? Do you want to talk about your mission?
My mission? I think it's actually quite simple. It's to give people the steps to create the life they desire from their heart. And that's it. Like literally help people help themselves to create the life they're proud of.
And I guess that's a good segue to how we met.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it was a year ago now. You know, we actually touched base. So I had a few things going on in my life at the time. I think it was May last year. Well, no, actually June last year. And I looked up Google to find for a life coach because I spoke to a friend and I said, you know what, I don't really need a therapist, but what I really want is direction in my life, because at the time there was some things going on at work and I wanted a different path. And so I contacted George on Google from Googling him. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. So I called him, we arranged an hour consultation, just a meeting. And when I went there, George, immediately blew me away because I realized that you are very similar to me, and we had a lot of things that we sort of agree with, and the way we think is similar. And in that 1 hour, he helped me realize that I had a trauma that I didn't even know I had, and you helped me overcome that trauma. Do you remember what that trauma was? It was me not being able to go out because I felt fear of leaving my wife behind, and
it's vague, but now that you're mentioning that, I do understand that, because we spent a lot of time after that together. So it all fits with, but I don't remember exactly what we spoke about in that first session.
It really opened my eyes to, okay, this guy's the right guy. Like, because after you did that, I spoke to my wife about, hey, times have changed now, you're no longer depressed, and my kid is 7 years old.
I do remember this.
Remember? The environment has all changed, but my mind was still stuck in that trauma.
Yeah. You were an accidental enabler.
That's right. Yeah. And from there, I was hooked. I remember after that, I told my wife, for my 40th birthday, this is it. I wanna get a life coach, and I think George is going to help me do wonders. And since then, there has been a major shifts in me at work, my personal life, So yeah, thanks to you, George.
Well, mate, I really enjoy working with people like you who you're so fast at understanding things, working things out. It's like a Ferrari, but you just got to learn how to drive it. And so you've come to me and you're a bit of a wild driver where, you got that Ayrton Senna. I watched the Netflix series of Ayrton Senna. I've always been a fan of him. He blew me away. And that was, so I recommend it. But anyway, and so I love it when you can just help someone notice a few things about how they're driving their Ferrari, and then suddenly they just can get so far so quick just because of a few insights that were really timely and meaningful, you know? And it makes me look good. You know? But it's really you owning it, and that's the true service of a coach. A coach is not on the field. A coach is just trying to help you see things you weren't seeing. And by you seeing it, you know what to do instinctively, you know?
Yeah.
Like very rarely do I need to talk about stuff that you haven't already lived in other areas of your life. It's really about, why are you living what you already know here, there, and over there? Over here. And you go, good bloody point. You know, why aren't I?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense. And so, yeah, you're such a go-getter. And even the story of why we're together now doing the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this whole place gets set up in like a blink of an eye. I mean,
2 days.
To me, it was a blink of an eye. He worked hard for 2 days, but he made it happen simply because as soon as your purpose is strong, you're unstoppable.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting, and it's also a good segue as to why we've got this podcast going, and I guess the vision for this podcast. You know, I mean, do you want to talk a bit more about the? You know, I mean, you obviously have a following with what you have currently. This is my first time doing a podcast, and obviously doing an interview style sort of video. But I think what really excites me about this journey is just growing, especially me growing from, you know, the experience and adding more to, I guess, to my skill set, and also just getting insight from you. And it's more like I think this workshop it has this casual sort of vibe where I don't feel like I need to be anyone else. I can just talk to you like a friend.
Exactly.
And then we can then just grow and explore all sorts of topics. And I think that's really exciting for me. But yeah, I'm curious as to what your vision is for the podcast. And
yeah. Well, people listening to us are thinking, where have you been, George? Because what happened was I had such a great co-host, you know, Rachel Donovan. She ended up needing to get married and have beautiful children and have an interior design career and everything. And so I was left without a co-host, and I thought I could easily find a co-host like that, you know, but no, it wasn't that easy. And so I had so many other good things going on in my life. I just let the podcasting just not happen anymore, right? So I had gotten to 75 podcasts.
wow.
Right? And tens of thousands of downloads, and it was great. It was building, and then I just stopped it, right?
Right.
Then you came along years later, and so now people are listening and going, oh, so George has got someone he believes would be a great co-host. Well, time will tell, all right? Yeah.
Yeah, time will tell.
But the key here is that you're being yourself and I'm being myself, and that's why I've got such a good vibe around us tackling topics and really dismantling what holds up an issue, a problem, and us giving each other insights into things, and then hopefully the listeners benefit as well. You know, that's what I think is going to happen, right? And obviously I've changed a lot. I've experienced so much since those podcast series before. So
when was the last one that you actually published? Like a year ago?
No, longer.
Oh,
Probably before COVID.
wow.
Before COVID, right? I did a few during COVID, and then it stopped. It was already slowing down at that time of COVID. So it's a long time, and so I've changed a lot. I've seen a lot, changed a lot, and then a lot of things changed around me that made me engage things that I never in my wildest dreams would have thought was possible. So life is just accelerating at such an enriching way. And so now here we are, and I'm just so looking forward to talking about those topics that everybody's divided on, like, you know, AI and
Forgiveness.
yeah, and even politics and stuff, because like it's like, what's happened to us as people? There's just such a weird tribalism that's intensifying.
Yeah.
And we've lost our critical thinking. Everybody's just so comfortable being on one team, feeling a membership and comfort of, yeah, you're my tribe. Let's hate them over there to give us meaning. And each side is doing that at the same time.
It's very divisive.
Being righteous, you know? So I want to, you and I'm sure we're going to look, I believe I'm a centrist, right?
I don't even know what that means.
A centrist is someone who tries to come to the middle, the center, between ideologies to try to consolidate the true value of the ideologies down to a common understanding, a synergized value from both sides, versus just thinking one side is right automatically and the other side is wrong. But being a centrist is not easy because sometimes one side is right, sometimes the other side is right. And so it doesn't look like you're a centrist when one side thinks you're siding with the other. But a centrist has to stay true to principles and values. And because we have our own subjectivity, we have to manage our own bias as well. So it's an epic work in progress trying to represent a greater position that everyone would benefit from. It's like a facilitator, a mediator who's trying to see all sides and trying to work out what is the underlying issues and opportunities here where everyone wins.
Yeah. I think it's also like, it's funny you say that. It's very challenging because you need a heightened level of self-awareness to be able to do that, right? And to notice, when am I being biased? And then it's also quite challenging. So I can understand why there's a thrill in that, because it's definitely something that requires a lot of, taking yourself away from the topic and observing the situation as it is, and then weighing, both sides of the story, and then making dissecting it. So I can see why you like that so much. So yeah, interesting. So one of the things I wanted to ask, first of all, this week has just been hell for me. For those of you guys who don't know, I think I had salmonella.
Cool.
And you know what's so funny is, in that 7 days, so my brother-in-law bought me a banh mi. It's like some dish, some Vietnamese bun. And unknowingly, the shop had raw fish and raw meat on the sides and everything. And to cut long story short, I got into this painful episode for like almost 4 days, where when you have that tummy ache, where it peaks up really, really high, and then it goes away, and then it peaks again, and then you have to go to the toilet.
Stomach cramping.
But for 4 days straight.
Oh my God.
And that's
intense.
It doesn't go away.
Oh my God.
So even after you've gone to the toilet, it's still there. And one of the things that I realized about that episode was, obviously, I lost weight. I'm at my ideal weight now, so that's a great thing. I stopped drinking wine, a good thing.
Can you give me some salmonella? I want to lose
I know. It's amazing. My neighbor, his daughters lost 6 kilos and the other one lost 4. My wife lost about 3. I lost about 2.7, all in 1 week. We don't know if it's water retention, but definitely everything's looser now. But anyway, coming back to my practice. So for those of you guys who don't know, I do a lot in the morning. So I go for walks, right? I do affirmations. I imagine after work, I put myself in a place where I can imagine and visualize my dream state. And I've been doing that religiously for, I think, about a month now. And I could not do it because the pain just grabs your attention in those moments and you just can't focus. I've tried, and I remember feeling, oh my God, this is what a person with arthritis feels like. Look, I don't know what arthritis. I don't want to downplay what it feels like, but I've heard that it's really painful. And so I could imagine, wow, if you had this every single day, how do you stay true to your practice? Because I could not do it for 4 days.
It's just a Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing,
Yeah.
It's a priority of urgency of what pain, where your focus should be.
Yeah.
I mean, if your body can't function and it's fighting for survival, I don't think lovely affirmations in this world is just...
Do you know what's so funny?
Is the ticket at that time.
I said to myself, everything's fine. Nah, screw that. It's not fine. I'm in pain. Don't lie to yourself, Azlan.
Your subconscious would have been going nuts on you.
Yeah, no, it went. And then I said, you know what? I'm not going to lie to myself. You're right. It hurts. I'm just going to write this out. I'm going to lie down. I'm not going to do my affirmations now. It was so funny when I said that. Immediately, it just clamped down on me. Stop the BS. Okay. But
What about a little walk? No.
yeah. But I was so excited on Sunday when when
you were coming out the other side of it.
when I was coming out the other side, there was no more pain, there was no more cramps, and I remember waking up at just so excited, 8 o'clock to sleep so that I can start my practice again. And one of the things that I remember feeling was when I walked outside. First of all, to be able to walk outside without any pain was a gift. You take everything for granted until you've been bedridden for 4 days, and you go, wow. Even tasting food, the simple things like chicken wings. I was craving for chicken wings, and I remember feeling the gratitude and the appreciation. And as I was walking, I was in a very good state of mind, and I wanted to share this with you because I said I want to share this thing with you, George. One thing that I realized was when I was walking and I gained back my feeling, like I could feel again, I could guide my feeling. I noticed that when I was in a good space, I attracted different thoughts that were aligned with that feeling place. And at the end of the day, after I finished work, I walked again and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm getting all these meh sort of thoughts. And in the past, I would be very angry with myself as to why am I feeling this? I was on a high in the morning. Why? And then I thought about the feeling place. I was feeling tense. I was feeling stressed. I was feeling time boxed. Yeah. And so the thoughts came and it matched the feeling. Yeah. So then I thought, wait a minute. Instead of changing my thoughts, why don't I change how I feel? Let me try to grab a better feeling place. And so, I mean, music does that, right? But I wanted to go with thoughts. So with that feeling place. So I started thinking about, at that time I felt a bit insecure because there's a lot happening at work with, redundancies and all that. And so I went, okay, what's secure? And I said, the sun is always going to shine tomorrow without any effort on my part. And so I started building on that. And then I got to a feeling place, not just affirmations, but a feeling place of like, it's going to be all right, man. Tomorrow, the galaxies are going to be there. And when I got into that mode, I started getting different thoughts.
That's right.
And so then I thought, am I a receiver of thoughts or am I a thinker of thoughts? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you're in that inspirational stage, you get different thoughts. So it's like a radio sort of frequency, So I used to get angry at myself for saying, damn it, why am I getting all this rock music? The noise. And I mean, I'm not
dissing rock
music, but why am I getting all this noise? And I tried to change the noise, not realizing that it was the radio, the channel that I was on. All I had to do was find a better feeling place to get to a different channel, and automatically all the thoughts that aligned to that channel came down without any effort on my part.
That's right.
And as towards the end, I was walking, I realized, oh my gosh, I don't even need to think a different thought. It comes. And so it really shifted my perception of, what am I? Are we thinkers or are we receivers of thought? That's
transmitters or receivers or both.
Or both. It really fascinated me, man.
See it like a reality bubble, and what reality you choose is real for you will determine what you receive in the thinking that gets broadcasted in that reality bubble. Because remember, thoughts are meant to serve an awareness to aid you in what is real. If you're in a reality bubble with a very specific ideology of, oh no, life is insecure, it's always a struggle to, stay ahead, anyone can pull the rug from underneath you, and you're too weak to be able to be resilient and bounce back, be resourceful and pivot. I just have to always be worried. If that's your reality bubble, then you have to have the thoughts to guide you in that awareness. Just stay safe.
Yeah.
But if you switch to a different reality bubble, like a different radio station that says, hey, you know what? Nothing's ever certain.
Yeah.
And life is always going to have ups and downs. And your job is to enjoy the ups, be grateful so they go even higher up, and then back yourself in the lows that it will not last, which will make the lows not so lows. And so therefore, when you relax and you take in life with its ups and downs, backing yourself to be worthy, capable to deal with it, and that there's always a way, you're going to have the kinds of thoughts that expect that there's a better way.
Yeah, yeah.
In any obstacle, and you're going to chill out.
Yeah. And this is the biggest shift for me was I was reaching for those thoughts that, things are going to be okay. I mean, not that like I'm going to get should I be made redundant? I'm going to get another place and it's going to be. But then what really helped me was anchoring the feeling of security and my capability, like I'm a powerhouse. The sun is going to shine. Universe, everything always works out for me. Going back to my past and looking at where things were so, was not known, and then I always came out on top.
Yeah.
And then building that until I got to a feeling place of I'm steady, my foundation is strong. Then the thoughts started to change. It was like, then you're gonna get the best job after this. Everything's gonna come and it's gonna be easy and life is great. In your
Meanwhile, you still got your job.
Yeah,
and here
yeah.
you are thinking you've moved on and preparing yourself in case it does happen.
And then it's so interesting bringing the better version of yourself to work every day, because that's the value that I give. I'm not gonna wait till my next job. This is now. I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna be the best that I can be. Make the great relationships, do the best things, and then things will just pan out. Like just bring the best self every day to work. And it really got me into I was so excited. And all these thoughts came after I felt, and I feel like I've unlocked a Pandora's box. Like I was so excited. This last 3 days is crazy. I wake up at 4 o'clock, jumping out of bed, going straight for my walks, and just feeling this power of being able to feel my way now, not think my way, but feel my way through life now. And regardless of what happens, I can hold that feeling just from pure discipline, and so.
So just a little insight into Azlan's world. He loves biohacking life. If he can find a silver bullet for an advantage, he's all over it, right? So right now he's onto something, right? He's always like that, and it's cool. And I reckon we're going to have awesome conversations around the latest biohacks that Azlan can bring to our conversations. It's going to be.
It's just so empowering. I honestly feel like I'm invincible. That's how I felt like this morning. I felt, wow, I can control how I feel now, and I really wish I can. I mean, I've got tools on how to do it, and I'm more than happy to share with everybody. But everything from self-soothing to taking a bird's eye view to starting small, going general. There's so many tools that I use in my and I just feel so empowered.
Yeah, and it really is about expanding that toolbox over time, because sometimes the tool that was working stops working, and then you discover in that new context you need other tools. And when you've got a wide enough toolkit, you just get a lot more agile to deal with most things in a timely way,
Yeah.
But doesn't it really come down to a realization that we all are subjected to rejection, abandonment, threats, a bit of survival issues where will we get enough food? Will the shelter stay above us so we can sleep protected? Will we stay in a community and not be rejected? Like there's always these things that, there are cliffs, I've got to stay away from them. There are nasty people, I don't want to get scammed. Like there's always these issues, right?
Yeah.
But what makes your reality your reality? You see, I believe that all the things that we all share in around what world we're in, the good and the bad, is the same. But who we choose to be determines the unique reality we live for a lifetime, which means we have 8 billion people on the planet, and there are 8 billion unique realities, because we must respect our own perception will determine what something becomes for us. Our experience is determined by what we think something is. It's why even in step 1 of EP7, roller coaster, Someone thinks they couldn't be more alive. The other person thinks they're dying on that roller coaster. Same ride, same time, same G-forces. Yet you got hell and heaven right next to each other through perception. So you have to ask yourself, how much is really going on that is supposedly absolute, and how much is going on because of what I've decided it has to mean and be for me. And once we appreciate the depth of responsibility around how we come at things, how we relate to things, then the true adventure is deep diving into ourselves, because there's so much to discover that will literally create new realities that we want versus the ones that we think are absolute for us.
That's very, very true. Basically, like, I guess what you're saying is what you perceive is what you receive. But one thing that I found really interesting as well, I want to know from your point of view, and we'll talk about EP7 in a bit, because the viewers are probably wondering what is EP7. But in terms of perception, you know how you said the roller coaster thing? I know a lot of people who are religious, they say, what would Jesus do now? What would Buddha do now?
Yeah.
So that's their way of...
Yeah, it's a good way to switch the lens.
Yeah, switch the lens. How do you switch your lens? Because you have a different lens. You are more of an empath, I would say. And you try to go, okay, what is your method of shifting your perception?
I think I crafted a lens a few decades without me knowing that that's what I was doing. And I crafted a lens that consolidated every teacher that impressed me with universal wisdoms they shared. And I consolidated it into a lens that also helped me assess what I observe in nature and nature systems that allow any organism to survive and thrive. And then I got to a point where I languaged it myself so I can own it, so that it was very intimate to me, like actualizing this lens, making it super personal to me, not something I can believe in, but something I own, to make it the hill I die on.
Wow.
Right? So when you said what lens do I switch to, I switch to the lens of a reality and an existence that, if it was not true, would all be in the poo. Right?
Wait, if it's not true, it'll all be in the poo. Explain.
Yeah. For example, I believe that we all deserve relationships with a sustainable value exchange.
Yes.
Yeah. But the sustainable value exchange has to be within perspective. For example, we raise our children and there's no sustainable value exchange.
Yes.
Materially, but there is, because they're damn cute.
Yeah.
And their affection.
They help you a lot.
And their development. And they're just so rewarding. So there is a value exchange there, And also, they are your family into your future as you get old. They are your meaningful relationships. So there is a sustainable value exchange. I always cross-check any situation to that variable. Where am I at? Where are they at with the sustainable value exchange?
Wow.
Then the next part of the lens is, okay, if the receiving or giving is compromised, lacking creativity to deliver the value in that exchange, then let's get creative. Let's innovate. Let's restore the sustainable value exchange. Don't keep it a value exchange that's win-lose, because everybody loses if it's not win-win. Because the person losing is going to get exhausted and depleted and resentful, and they will isolate, and then you lose them. So you lose whatever you were receiving from them, right? And the person who's been selfless, hoping to be rewarded, they end up being isolated because that was never sustainable and they never represented their needs properly. They just thought they could be a martyr and hope hope the world will pay attention. So I'm talking about a lens that keeps me responsible and keeps my relationships responsible to sustainability. It's like an inner sustainability policy. You know, it's like we all rave and we all want to throw billions of dollars of tax money into sustainability policies because we believe that's our responsibility to the environment. What about our inner environment?
Yeah.
What about our relationship dynamics?
Yep.
They are in an environment. Where's the sustainability policy there? And, you know, it goes back to fractals. And so part of the lens is fractals. It's like if there's a set of rules that allow an organism to survive and thrive, I believe that those rules are universal, which is the micro becomes the macro, and then that is a micro to the next macro. So I always look at the lens of what can I learn from the way my body operates with the way my relationships are unfolding. Like my relationship to my body, my relationship to my identity, who I think I am, my relationship to my partner, my relationship with my daughter, to friends, to clients. And there's so much to learn from the relationships that are working to then cross-check in the other ones that are not working. You will always discover that you are not following the same wise playbook that does create a sustainable value exchange.
And this concept is such an alien concept, especially to the Asians. I'm not a representative of all Asians in the world, but if you look at Asian culture, there is no such thing as sustainable exchange, because it's all about hierarchy. So it's either my way or the highway, and there is no growing up in an Asian family, there's always just hierarchy, and it's just there's no room for that. Negotiation. So it's the whole concept is sort of like, wow, what is that? For a person like myself. So I'm still struggling with that term because
Azlan, that's really interesting. You should say that, because nothing can sustain without a sustainable value exchange. So I would say whatever is lacking in negotiation has been systemized in a structure to force a negotiation in some way. So I don't know what that is in the Asian cultures, but there's got to be some form of kindness and protection for the ones that aren't being represented. Otherwise, it will cause so much damage, society will collapse. There's got to be something that is materially meaningful and sustains a child in that culture all the way to adulthood. And maybe the sustainable value exchange is I will obey, but then I get the reward of people obeying me later.
Yeah.
And then that becomes
the hope.
Yeah, exactly. But that becomes the philosophical long game of a sustainable value exchange.
Right.
It's probably not so elegant.
Yeah, it's not.
It's like a hack job, man-made kind of structure to try to emulate what nature does moment to moment. If you look at an organism in a moment, its receptors are heightened because it never wants to be complacent. If suddenly something that it was relying on to stay alive started to become less prevalent, it immediately starts to evolve and adapt to find what it needs. It doesn't wait.
It doesn't wait. It doesn't
until
ask.
It's 20 years old or 25 years old before it can bark orders at its younger,
so true.
generation.
And that's so inspiring because, using nature as a model is that's what nature does. So then why am I not doing this? Is it because I've been forced? I mean, simple things like, family traditions, there's no, is there a different route? Can I not do this year? No, it's, you have to do it. And you have to do this. You have to come to this. You have to speak to this auntie. You have to, always smile. And it's all, there's no, what about my needs, and so it just carries on generation after generation. And like you said, I think there is that hope that, one day my kid is going to have to listen to whatever I have to say until you have a kid and you realize that's not happening. So
exactly. We get ripped off, don't we? They change the rules just when it's our turn.
That's right. And so it's so interesting. I'm honestly still struggling with that concept, that sustainable exchange sort of thing, because I negotiate, but not to the point, not to your level where, you're really good at it. And
oh, thank you very much. Black belt in sustainable value exchange negotiations. Sounds such a weird conversation.
Yeah, it is, but it's such a fascinating concept for me. And coming back to what we said about the EP7, tell the viewers what EP7 is, because we've referred to it like 3-4 times now.
Yeah. Look, EP7 was the acronym for Empowered for Purpose in 7 Steps. And what had happened was I was a bit of a personal development junkie for like over a decade at that time. And then I was coaching for a long time, several years by then. And I was always into principles and processes. I always loved the idea of empowering someone else to understand the principles and the processes behind problem solving. So I loved self-coaching. I wanted to always teach people to self-coach themselves, not to undermine the coaching profession, but to know that, why would you just coach someone to improve in a situation, but not also teach them to fish as well? It doesn't mean they don't like fishing with you, and they loved your lived experience, and they loved how you can hold space for them. And sometimes when you're in the thick of an emotional state, it's great to have someone outside of you who's not burdened by your distorted perception, who's had lived experience, who could easily just see what's going on, the patterns, and ask the right questions and get you out of the fog. So it's a beautiful thing, but what about those times when you can self-reflect and have quality analyzing of what's going on? See, a lot of the reasons why we get analysis paralysis is because our analysis is flawed. There are loaded assumptions hiding in the way we analyze that keep the blind spots to the very ideas of how we're accidentally sabotaging ourselves and the very ideas that would solve it. So we end up getting really exhausted, don't we? Mm-hmm. And so teaching quality self-analysis was something that EP7 was all about, but it directed it for a meaningful life. So empowered for purpose, right? So basically the 7 steps were really about who are you? Why are you powerful? How can you understand when you're trapped into a perception that's not serving you? How can we prove to you that everything in you is already there from universal wisdom, that your brain's just wired to block in areas where you need it? And what is the role of your imagination and intuition into a flow state in that? Where have you been in flow? What's blocking that flow? How do you turn it back on? And turn it back on, not just to sort out your survival challenges, but now to actually go to another level and make life meaningful, empowered for purpose, in every aspect of your life, so that you're not trying to find purpose in a career as if that's what purpose is limited to. But no, it's multidimensional. It's like purpose is created, and our purpose is at the mercy of our imagination. And so we learn to create purpose in our roles, our relationships, for our goals, and that's ongoing. And then you ultimately end up loving being a work in progress, managing your perception, and that each level you reach, there's a glass ceiling waiting for you when you dream bigger, and that's normal, and you're not offended by your newfound limitations preventing you from getting there, and you just embrace the perception management processes of deconstructing that perception and reconstructing, and then also being resilient, aligning in the areas where you're volatile and you're trying to create new habits, and just being compassionate to yourself in that wobble as you get strategic, like change management principles, and you learn how to really achieve that new default version that doesn't try to be that way. It just is.
That was a very good summary, George.
That's EP7.
A+ for you. I think for me, I can...
A+ for me. I'm come on, we know.
One thing that I really found, because I've been through the EP7 course, and the few key nuggets that I got out of it, and one of the things that I got out of it was the empowerment principles that really opened my eyes to, oh my gosh, I didn't even have a principle before. Or
You did.
I mean, but I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you put it in front of me, and so that was one thing and I drive to those principles now. And then also I found the deconstruction very, very challenging. That's why I was laughing. I remember how I used to go.
I know, because you were hard on yourself.
Yeah, and
we almost had to do an assessment on you being too hard on yourself in the assessments.
Man. And I actually felt like curling up into a fetal position every time we had those deconstruction sessions, because you had to let all of your negativity out. And I'm the guy that I wouldn't air my negative thoughts. And so for me, that was very confronting for me to sit down and go, okay, let's dig up the dirt and let's feel all these emotions, because in order for you to deconstruct, you need to feel those emotions. And I always avoid those emotions, like I don't want to dabble in that. I only want to have good feelings. And so that was very, very eye-opening as we go through the sessions. And I went, oh, okay, and then the third bit was that, having the different perceptions, like you always talk about, having fixed perceptions, this topic about the clinic and, how you got me to see my family in a different way. And now that's changed my feelings towards them and how I'm constantly improving that now. And
that's an example, like I was saying earlier, that what reality are you in? It's the one you have loaded with what you insist it is.
Yeah.
The same family is a completely different family to you now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's why I say to people when they do EP7, please don't change your job. Please don't change your environment. If you can, sometimes you have to. But if you can, don't change it, because I want you to see the power of your transformation upon the same environment to make you realize that the true environment is what you decide it is.
Very powerful.
Yeah,
And I think that's why people make rash decisions thinking, if I quit this job, I'm going to go somewhere else. They're going to get the same thing, because the transformation hasn't happened internally. They're carrying all of that old self to the new place.
Yeah, you pack your bags, your baggage, and you take it elsewhere.
That's right.
And unpack it on the new environment. And slowly you accidentally condition everyone into the same dynamics of what your subconscious insists is reality.
And it's almost like you're pulling the same outcomes, the same reactions, the same perceptions off the people because of the way you're behaving in the, so like you said, you're packing the bags just to go to another place, only to know that it's the same thing. So having that internal transformation without having to move anywhere, and then seeing your transformation and go, hey, you know what? Everything's changing now. Like you said, everything's the same, but everything's changing. And I think the third thing that I learned a lot about this one is the fractals. So there's an episode in there, there's a chapter about fractals and how there's an example that you gave about a king. If you want to be a king and a queen, you need to have certain characteristics in order for you to be able to make sure the economy is running smoothly, make sure that people are being fed. And you need to have certain qualities. And so that got me thinking about, what are my daily habits that are contributing to who I am? And I can't expect a different outcome if I don't change my fractals, if I don't change my habits. That's how I connected that bit. And I started going for walks. I started changing my internal dialogue, at work, and just changing everything and going, this is who I want to be, but I can't expect the same shit if I was to follow the same old Azlan.
Yeah.
That was a big one as well, that shift. And then obviously the imagination bit, I remember this was crazy. My imagination has been dead since I was young. Like, I forgot how to imagine, right? And so I came in wanting.
But hang on a minute. You were you created really cool, funny skits.
Yeah, but
so that was one of your.
That was one of my outlets.
It was evidence that you had creativity, you had an imagination.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. It got blocked everywhere else.
Yeah. I could not imagine myself. The example that I gave George was, I have a dream car, and the last 20 years I've been dreaming the same visualization, the same garage, the same lighting for 20 years. I've not changed it at all, and I was, why? There's so many things that you can change: where you're at, what the air smells like, the temperature, what you're wearing. I could not go that far. And so you taught me how to use my imagination. And I remember sitting down and feeling a sense of euphoria when I remember I was imagining myself eating steak in some high building in Italy, overlooking the vineyards, having this really nice steak and feeling the joy of eating that steak and actually feeling it. And it was like, what? I can do this? Like I did not know I could do this. And so that changed a lot as well. That changed, so many things, man. So I definitely vouch for this program. I mean, obviously you have to be all in. And like I said,
this is not a product placement commercial.
No. I really.
We've got steak knives as a special promotion
for $10.
So you can cut your steak that you're imagining.
No, I'm just so blown away by it, and it really changed me. I think this was the best thing that I did for my 40th. And the fact that I'm continuing this journey and really, identifying more nuggets, it really empowers me, man. I feel so powerful. That's what I feel like now. It's just different. Yeah. So,
one of the challenges when you're trying to create any kind of journey or program is that you don't want it to be cerebral. You don't want it just to be intellectual, where you're learning ideas and you're trying to think better, because that is such a one-dimensional way of trying to improve your life.
Right.
And so one of the limitations of doing any program is, can the program get you to add layers to your lifestyle daily that expand beyond the intellectual? Right. And so that's why brain training, form of meditation, that's why intuition development disciplines and creativity disciplines, so that we're not just analyzing and deconstructing perception, we are nurturing our flow state, we're de-stressing, we're trying to create a wholeness of being and a balancing of using more of our brain, right and left.
Yeah.
And so that we can start to actualize precious dimensions of ourselves beyond a philosophy, beyond wanting something to be true, to actually start to experience it, And it takes the person true commitment and courage to commit to doing the work, because obviously we've taken, 1,500 people probably by now through the program. And so I've witnessed, the difference between people who engage fully and people who just do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Even the bare minimum, they think it's great, but doing courses and going away, loving what you learned and having some wins is barely a success for me, because I spent 150 grand over a decade because I was a personal development junkie, 14 trips to America in 4.5 years.
Wow.
Just a real, I loved learning, and travel was fun for that. And a lot of that money was to travel to these places, right? But the point is that I would go home and it would kind of slowly, the old world would reclaim me back, because I didn't calibrate enough of what I was learning into my identity, into my perception, and into habits. And so it's like when you are at work and you're doing a course, and you get all excited. You think, I'm going to go back to my desk and I'm going to be so organized after doing this priority management course.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to be such a great negotiator after this negotiation workshop with everyone. And then suddenly you notice that 90% of it kind of wasn't translating the way you felt it should based on that course.
Yes.
So I have to say that 80% of what I knew had to happen in EP7 was about application.
Yes.
Only 20% was to build the credibility for you to go all in on doing the work for application. But it had to be about application, because I'd already suffered 10 years of building a dam of knowledge and only letting a bit of the water trickle down the creek on the other side of that dam. And even that was precious, and it kept me going. Well, what about opening up more and letting that flow? It does take a lot of commitment, doesn't it?
It does. And remember the conversation I had with you about I've always spent, I'm like you, I love self-improvement topics.
Yeah.
And for 20 years, I've been listening to tapes every single day. Every single day, I'm listening to podcasts and tapes.
Yeah.
And there comes a point in time where you have to put the book down and you have to apply. And that was like, I remember I told you the gauge, I was like 95% learning, 5% applying.
Yeah.
Now my job is to shift all of my knowledge now to go 50-50 at least.
Yeah.
Let me learn 50% and let me apply. So whenever I catch myself to go, I want to listen to this podcast, I go, no, I'm going to imagine, I'm going to implement what I know. I'm going to start imagining. Like you said, the application part is the most important part, because then you become, the student, like the teacher and the student.
It's like finish the circle. Don't get halfway and love what something can be. Become it and live it fully. Finish the circle.
But there's also the fear of, it's like, the imposter syndrome. Like, do I have enough knowledge to apply this? Like, am I being an imposter? Like, do I need to listen more? Do I need to listen to more of George? Do I need to listen more of, Anthony Robbins or whatever? And there's that sense of confidence level that you have to go, no, I'm ready. I know what I know. Time to apply.
A year before EP7 happened, I hit that juncture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, where I said, I'm not reading any more books. I'm not listening to anything anymore. I now just have to own action on what I know.
Wow.
I made that decision, and it was huge because then it was huge because then I had to pay attention to my environment to see where I could use my better judgment to start actually making different decisions, right? And that's what got me more tuned into fractals and nature.
Right.
Because everything that I had learned had to be detectable in my real-time environment when I needed it to action it. And so I became a lot more present. As soon as I shifted the energy from everyone outside of me knows so much more than me, and I just have to somehow grab enough of it and it will just transform me automatically, that was wrong.
Yes, I totally understand that. Like, I completely understand that.
It's like we're going to get it through osmosis,
Yes. If I read more.
If I'm in the bathtub of knowledge long enough, surely it will go into the pores of my skin and it will possess me with wisdom.
That's actually a very good voice. I like that.
I used to always muck around like I could be a film trailer voice.
Yeah.
In a world.
That is so good.
One man.
Oh my God, that is so good.
Odds.
That's insane. But yeah, no, definitely that's the other thing that I got from the course as well. So there's so many things that we learned. I think it was such a blissful experience for me, and I always look forward to it. And I was saying to my wife, "Here we go. Let's get the ball rolling." Yeah. And even at work, my life has changed. Now I'm in this immersive leadership course from next week, and people are starting to invite me to leadership meetings, which never happened before.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I've not asked for it.
But you're an imposter.
Yeah.
What's going on?
It was so funny. I was in a meeting, and there were all leaders in there, and I looked like the youngest guy. I mean, because I'm Asian. And so I looked like I was 12, and all these guys with white hair and
he looks like he's 12, ladies and gentlemen.
And I was wearing a Jordan 1 sort of sneakers. That just made it worse. And I walked in and with my Jordan 1 sneakers, and everyone was dressed up, and I was like, oh, okay. And what am I doing here? I did not know there was all just leaders. I did not ask for it, but like you said, things started to change within me.
That's right.
That suddenly my
every action has an obstacle reaction.
Can you please explain that again? Because for the viewers who've heard it for the first time, I find this concept so interesting.
Yeah, okay. So physics, the way objects interact with one another. We are not in a vacuum. Anything you feel compels you to flow in accordance with what you feel based on what you assume. And so that is an outward broadcast of the version of you. And people will experience it through impressions they get of you, through micro facial expressions they get of you. That's part of your broadcast, your tone, choice of words, what you say, don't say, what you do, don't do. That pretty much becomes your brand of consistent action outwards. So then what happens, that shapes the way people feel around you, what they think you are and how you're going to be. And then they decide how much they engage, how much they're attracted, how much they're not. Right. What they can get away with how they treat you, what they can't, how much they want to make a difference to you, how much they don't care. Like all of that becomes the reaction to your action of who you choose to be.
Right.
So every action has an opposite equal reaction, which means all you have to worry about is who you think you are and how you choose to be and what world you think you're in, because that will become your brand of output that then attracts the output of others back onto you.
Now that's all well and fine. It sounds really, really awesome. But what about, like we talked about the abusive relationships.
Yeah.
So how does that work in that sort of?
Easy, because you're an enabler. When someone is abusive, your action is you allow it. And they know they can get away with it. And that becomes the dynamic. Every action has an opposite equal reaction. If you abuse me and I say to you, don't talk to me like that, Azlan, that hurt my feeling. And you go, well, I don't care. I just pretty much told you that I'm weak. You can get away with it. And then you go, he's a whinger, but I'm not taking him seriously. He's just a whinger and he's pleading to me and I've got the power.
Right.
See, that's the action reaction. It doesn't matter that I actually said to you, I don't want you to treat me that way.
Yeah.
My energy was, please, you've got the power over me. Use it wisely. Did you get it?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So then, okay.
Also, I need to express some serious compassion for domestic violence situations where someone's in legitimate danger, right? In those situations, there was a long period of desensitization to abuse where that other person kept scaling up the violence and the abuse, right? So you can make an argument that early on, if that person was not so desensitized to abuse, they could have picked up on it and just not got into the relationship in the first place or got manipulated, right? Yeah. But also, it doesn't matter. If someone's in that situation, they're in danger, then the action reaction is this. I can't escape. He's too powerful. Or she's too powerful. I don't want to be sexist. Or they are too powerful. Yeah. Right? And I just have to just be nice and kind and hope that they will have pity over me, not want to hurt me today. Right?
Right.
So what's happening is my action is saying there is no way to get out.
Yeah.
And therefore I don't look. And therefore I don't find.
What is the underlying feeling though? Disempowerment, lack of self-worth. So they need to fix that.
Yeah. And also that I live in a world where there are no options to truly give me what I deeply deserve, which is safety.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there are no options. Cops can't help me because they've got so much red tape that person will just pick me off in between the red tape and I'm gone, you know? So what good is it that, okay, fine, they might jail him or he might even get away with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But blah, blah. Like all this kind of thinking of the law is too slow, cops are too slow, it takes them.
I can't find anyone better. There's nobody else who likes me.
Yeah, no one understands how dangerous he is, like that kind of thinking, right?
Yeah.
Now, you rob yourself of the creativity and the strategic things you can do to escape. Right? Because you're not looking for it because you think none of it is relevant and none of it will help you.
Right.
Right? So you don't look. So therefore, you live in a world where you think you being caged in a violent, domestic, abusive relationship is so absolute for you, you surrender into it being absolute in your actions of submissiveness and lack of resourcefulness, lack of looking for ways to know you deserve better that you can access and escape.
Wow, it's explained to me really well. Now I'm coming to terms with this, that opposites. What do you call it again? The
Opposite equal reaction.
opposite equal reaction.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because, coming back to that, I just had to add one more thing because I know someone who's in this relationship, and it's like you said, when someone is being threatened with a knife, you run. You don't care about your own personal development. You don't care about your creativity. All you do is you're trying to escape that person.
Exactly.
And so this person has to walk on eggshells because that partner is just so abusive that they stifle their own growth, their own creativity out of fear, just plain fear. And it's like that pain that I had in my tummy. All you can focus on is that pain and that fear, and it just stifles you. Everything just stops. So imagine if you're a great musician, all of that goes to hell because you're so scared. And is it my place to talk to that person?
It's no.
Yeah,
I mean, you want to hold the space for them, let them know that they're loved and that there is a way, and that they have to just have hope and believe and want to look, just one step at a time. But, a lot of the violence is not the actual power. It's the making you believe you're powerless.
It's the spiritual torment.
It's the psychological manipulation that makes you believe that you are helpless. That is the true, that's where the damage is done.
Yeah.
You see, if I can make you believe that you have no options, so you don't look or pursue those options, you're my slave.
Yeah, slave. You chop the person's leg off.
Exactly.
You have to lean on
I don't have to be violent towards you that often because you're just jumping to my tune.
Yeah.
And I own you. And you think you might hate me and be resentful, and all that. But your life is fear-based. Your smile, your act of kindness, you end up creating a very sick type of relationship with someone because you hate them, resent them. You probably fantasize killing them to be free of them. But you have to be kind to them just to keep them from hurting you.
Yeah, and it's so sad when this person told me that my fantasy is for this person to die.
So they can escape.
So they can escape.
Yeah.
Can you imagine living a life like that? I mean, my heart goes out to all the people who are in these relationships and just get help. I mean, there's so many. I mean, in Australia, there's a lot of help that you can get.
Yeah.
With the helplines and all that.
I really like how women get together in those domestic violence support groups and they even have refuge. Because I think when you're around a lot of women who escaped and they believed in themselves in the end, I reckon a woman being surrounded by that environment to restore hope and learn strategies and learn what happened and also validation and compassion. Because it's easy to overtrust someone and before you know it, you're completely psychologically manipulated into such a compromised state that it's almost like
it's like a spiral.
It's like the frog in the boiling water. Like each degree of psychological manipulation doesn't seem like much, but over time, your brain got wired into submission where the boiling water, you can't escape the boiling water anymore. So you got to have so much compassion for them and they've got to have compassion for themselves because there's so much shame. It's like, why did I allow this to happen to me? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, we are so fallible. Like our brain is so gullible and learning to be balanced and to being human is not for the faint-hearted, right?
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is you're trying to be available and vulnerable enough to let people in, but you also have to have enough boundaries to not let the wrong people, the wrong behavior become toxic within your boundaries when they breach your boundaries. And so that's a learning. That's a work in progress. And when you've been raised in an abusive household yourself, your brain never got wired to have that perspective. So you're easily blindsided. And so I think a lot of these people, the first healing steps are to know how normal it is to get manipulated from overtrust and how their coping was already conditioned into them from what they observed around them when they were younger. And so once they feel normal for their situation, then they can be introduced to new ideas that their heart yearns for that makes more sense, which is they deserve better, they're powerful, they can be creative, they could create a meaningful life outside of the clutches of a very weak person who, once you see properly that person, their pain, why they abuse, and you lose the fear, it's actually a different dynamic then. Because now you will call the cops if they do anything with you. And you will be clever and strategic and get away from them. And none of their threats touch you anymore. And then they realize they're powerless. They're powerless. And then they're going to chase somewhere else to feel powerful because they're not going to hang around something where they feel powerless anymore.
Right. The only twist to this story is this person's actually a guy, and he's even more embarrassed by that fact that he's a guy.
That's a
and it's a lot. I mean, if you notice,
another layer, isn't it?
Yeah, wow. It's a completely different layer, and it's so like, I don't know your history, but I think for Asian families, even in my circle of friends, you're starting to see this I want to say switch in dominance, but guys
have been emasculated a lot in our culture.
And I'm not saying you have to be Andrew Tate and believe in what he believes in, but there are a lot of, you'll be surprised, there's a lot of domestic violence, especially. I'm not talking physical, I'm talking the mental stuff, which is even worse, the psychological warfare between the husbands and the wives, and the husbands suffer, and then they speak to other husbands who they think are going through the same thing, and they'll say, hey man, I feel so embarrassed, and then it's so interesting, and this person is almost like house arrest.
Yeah, I knew someone who was in that situation, and
it's interesting.
It's very complicated because it's like,
and he's afraid to ask for help because he's a man.
I know.
So then, what do you do?
I know, and here's the thing, right? It's like asking for help is being resourceful. No one in their power can ever get anywhere without being resourceful. Leverage any momentum like the law to hold anything accountable that's breaching the rules of you deserving to be safe. It's the mechanics of being wise, leveraging momentum. The police force has got the momentum of knowing what's right and wrong to keep people's bodies safe from harm from other people.
Right.
And maybe some level of financial, but not so much. Like maybe just basic stealing, right?
Yep.
But the fraud is a bit complicated, and cops, it's out of my, it's above my pay grade.
There's a whole separate topic.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But when someone feels weak for not being helped, it's because there's the, I don't want to call it toxic masculinity. I want to call it toxic positivity.
Oh.
Because there's toxic positivity and there's toxic negativity.
Right.
Right. And that's where we go all in on needing to think that we're all powerful. We have to have all the answers. And therefore it's shameful that we didn't to get out of a situation. That's toxic positivity. That's saying I'm supposed to have it all and be extremely positive and not let anything negative touch me. That's toxic positivity. Because, it's funny, full circle, we talk about me being this, I want to be a centrist generally, as a work in progress. It's like, what is the middle where I can take what's negative and then use what's positive to help me navigate through it.
Right.
So you need your left and your right hand, right, kind of thing. No offense to the one-handed people.
Don't go there, man.
Well, go there. You've been going there. Every time we say that, we go, oh, we've excluded someone on the planet. Damn it. We need a disclaimer to say we're kind and we're nice people. That's the world we're in now. Too many people going, oh, did he just exclude me?
Yeah.
No, seriously. We need a light heart, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
So we need to take the piss out of ourselves
every time
in these conversations. But yeah, so I think that person, I'm talking indirectly to them right now, wink, wink.
No.
Right? You deserve better, and don't let any kind of loaded assumptions about you needing to justify being isolated and under-resourced because you're supposed to be the mountain that solves all your problems. You can interview anybody in any profession who's achieved anything of substance, and you will realize they never ever let what they didn't know or their stuckness stay. They immediately leverage other people with lived experience and with power or whatever kind of resource that then helped them get to where they wanted to get to. So consolidate, back yourself, be clever, be strategic, use every level of advantage. For example, if someone's physically, hurting you, use the law. If someone is psychologically manipulating you, use therapists and others to help you become so aware that you start to build your internal, that awareness builds internal understanding. And as soon as you see someone trying to manipulate you and you're seeing it in real time, they lose the power because you see it for what it is.
Yes.
Right?
And calling it out as well. So.
Exactly. So use therapists for the psychological abuse. Use a lawyer for financial manipulation in a situation if they're trying to control you out of your fund. Just leverage wherever the problem is, whatever scaffolding of support that is being built for you to use as a genuine resource. Be resourceful. Be proud of being resourceful because powerful people are resourceful.
So interesting as well. This person is rich, so I think it'd be easy for them to get a therapist, but there are some of my friends who are not, and they're going through this. And like you say, if you're resourceful, go to your parents, seek funding from them and just go through that 5 or 6 sessions, and sometimes leverage your Medicare. I mean, in Australia, you have, you can have 6 sessions for free.
Yeah.
So even at work, there's employee assistance programs. There's all sorts of stuff that you can leverage as well. Just find a way to, like you said, detach from that perception, because it's really poisonous, isn't it? Once you start believing in those false assumptions, you just get deeper and deeper into the spiral where you believe, and it just gets worse and worse. So get that help that you need. And it was. How did we get to this conversation?
This has become a mental health hotline.
That's right. How is that? How did it come here, man? So no, it was.
Get help.
What were we talking about? We were talking about opposite reaction.
We went from opposite equal reaction. And I think it's because often people think, but are you saying that I'm responsible for everything that happens to me? That's why that triggered you going, but what about those situations where surely you didn't bring on abuse?
Yeah.
And then I immediately picked up on where you were going with that. And we ended up in this rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing to show that you, just because you're attracting something accidentally based on how you were being doesn't mean you deserve it. That's a very different thing. You have to audit and be responsible for what you're broadcasting, because you could be attracting levels of manipulation and abuse simply because you're choosing to stay naive. You see, we can never stop bad things happening to us, but we have to be responsible for the patterns of bad things. If it becomes a pattern, that's on you. The first time, second time, before you realize it's a pattern, you know what? Cop it on the chin. It's called being human.
It's like that saying from George Bush, shame on you, shame on me. I forgot what it was. Happens twice, shame. Anyway, he stuffed that up. Worse than I can imagine. But I mean, worse than I can recall it. But yeah, that's interesting. Very, very interesting. Can I ask, out of your 25,000 hours, what was the main reason why people go to you? Is it career change? What are the main, I mean, I don't even know if you can disclose this, but what is the main?
In hindsight, in hindsight, when I look back at, the last 15 years, more specifically, I would say it's relationships.
Really?
Yes.
Wait. As in?
All relationships. So it's relationships around roles of partner, parenting, and work colleagues, being a manager, having a business and having staff. It's all about relationships, because relationships, I love saying this, relationships are the glue to quality experiences.
Right. Oh, you got that one line.
But they are.
Yeah.
But aren't they?
Yes.
We're not even the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And so most people will come to me
God.
for relationships outside of them. Some of them will be aware that too much self-loathing and self-esteem, so they come for the relationship with themselves. They want to be kinder and believe in themselves and be confident. But everybody ends up going home to how they are treating themselves and why, because that's the foundation. So you said to me, why do people come to you? It's like they want to feel connected. Yeah. They want to feel like they matter. They want to feel like they're in a sustainable value exchange where they matter and to other people, and other people want to matter to them. It's not rocket science. It's relationship science.
Right. And when they come to you, is it triggered? Like for me, I came to you because it was triggered by a massive event in my life.
Yeah, often something pushes you too far.
Oh, pushes. Okay.
Yeah, and where things have it's either a perfect storm where too many things have gone wrong and it just tipped you over the edge. And you're trying to reclaim balance and there's too much trauma that happened from that perfect storm, or something just slowly just got worse and worse to the point where you wake up and you've had enough.
The tipping point.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm so glad that things turned out the way it did. It's such an interesting thing when you think about your own personal development and how important it is. That relationship with yourself bit it solves everything if you really put time into it.
Yeah. But this is a game of, if I'm stuck, there's a good chance that my perception is distorted into
yes,
toxic positivity and toxic negativity. And so whenever I audit anyone, it's like an audit. And I say that because that's a fractal.
Yes.
Because the whole point of an audit is you suspend judgment, you critically think, you collect the data and then you try to see patterns of fraud, exploitation. Well, what are we doing? We're finding you're defrauding yourself.
Yeah. Because
you're believing things about yourself that are so not true based on flawed data. You've drawn conclusions and
so based on limited experience, like one scenario, and you just drew a conclusion and then you made that your identity.
Yeah, or because you don't see how you are being that attracts something.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of consistent data that's pattern. It's a pattern, so it's not a one-off. And so your brain goes, see, I told you this is reality. This is just how it is. It sucks, right? and so you are conditioned into that resolve, right? That's how it is, because you don't see how complicit you were.
Yeah.
In not only allowing it to happen, but to continue it to happen.
You just reminded me of my pet peeve.
What's your pet peeve?
I told this to my wife one day. I was like, I hate it when people say that it's because of how I grew up. This is just the way it is because of how I grew up. This is just the way it is because...
Oh, yeah, they lock themselves into an identity with their past, as if their past is them.
That's right. And it really triggers me. Like, this is how I was raised. Well, tomorrow, it bears no, like, the past has no bearings on what it can be like tomorrow. You can just make a decision and go, just say, I'm rude because I was raised this way. And then you just put this dead end, and that really pisses me off. When I hear that, every now and then, from other people as well, I can't change that. That's how my mom did that, my brother did that, and then they just close, and then I just close. And the moment they say that, I know, okay, this person's not willing to change.
You're so judgy.
No, I mean, why would you spend...
Azlan, you're so judgy.
I mean, it's such a not a brain drain, but it's emotionally draining, because it's like when someone's made up their mind about sushi. I don't know why I feel like having sushi. Yeah. But let's just say someone says, I don't want to have sushi because...
You miss salmonella?
Yeah.
You haven't you found it?
I know.
I'm kidding. I love sushi too.
They were like, raw fish because of the radio. And then they'll give you 10,000 reasons why sushi is bad. And there's no point. And it's just this uphill battle. So what I like to do is I like to imagine myself on this little boat. I'm going uphill, talking to this person. And then I make a conscious decision in my mind to turn around and let the oars go. And just... Let the wave just take me down this stream, and I'm just having a good time. I don't want to fight the stream.
Yeah. And so look, often when I'm in that situation where someone's defending the indefensible.
Indefensible.
Yeah. I ask questions. I just ask questions. I go, so you saying that you can't change the way you are being in that situation because you've always been that way? Are you saying that if you're in a habit, you can't break it?
Well, what are you saying in a passive-aggressive way?
No,
but
unless the way they were being was hurting me. No, for sure, I'd have a bit of sting.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
In my facilitation.
Yeah.
But if I'm seeing someone defend their limitations so illogically, while they're in pain, it's really important to slow it down, Azlan, and not judge, because judgment already triggers them into shutting down further, right? Because the whole point here is, can they be safe in being wrong? Because they don't think they're safe in being wrong. So our job is to make them safe in being wrong about anything. It's like even the work we did together, my job was to earn your trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be on some bullshit high horse.
Yeah, pedestal.
You know, making out as if, you know, Azlan, let me coach you to becoming as good as me. It's like, what a shitty thing to even believe is true. I always see clients as they are just fellow souls with me on a journey, and we're just using systems to reclaim our power. And so I love doing it. So, you know, I'm going to hold the space for you and introduce you to concepts for you to play with to discover more and more of how powerful you are. So when you meet someone at a barbecue or something and they start talking about things in a way that's, you know, very limited, I play the long game there. I just plant seeds. So you're saying this, but how would you explain that? How are you saying this, but how would you explain that? And so I use the fractals of where things don't work the way they are insisting they do. And you watch their brain not know how to fit it in. And confusion is our friend. I say this a lot because when a brain is confused, it quickly realizes that everything it thought was absolute is no longer absolute, and it has to update itself. So it goes searching. So humility is restored, curiosity is restored. It can finally find things it never found before. So your job is just to confuse people.
I can do that. That's easy.
Maybe we should get business cards done called "I'm a confusion agent."
Confusion specialist. No, that's really interesting, because the funny thing is your approach is completely different to mine, because I'm more of a, all right, I'm done. I'm not gonna engage this person. This person thinks that sushi is bad. I'm not gonna, well, no matter what I say, it's not gonna, but I never think about, okay, should I ask this person a question? I never, because to me, maybe because of my lack of experience, that to me that sounds like uphill paddling. But I guess if you ask a question in a neutral way without being passive aggressive, then it can be, like you said, insightful for the person, because sometimes, like, with enough confusion, it will trigger transformation.
Yeah.
You know, but it takes skill.
At some point, I want to talk to you about this 8-step process that distilled out of EP7 after probably a good several years of EP7. I started to notice that while I was talking about principles and while I was doing deconstruct, reconstruct, there was a process there that was quite elegant that I hadn't pinned down properly. And it was only until I noticed people outsmarting the deconstruct, reconstruct that I thought, what is going on here? How are they doing that? And how can I make them conscious of them doing that? And I discovered this 8-step process. And so I want to share this with you quickly, because I think that if you're conscious of this 8-step process, you will love wherever you are, however you engage, because it's flawless in how it helps you.
What?
I know. Talk about biohacking.
What is this?
Biohacking.
Wait,
all right.
what is this out of the? Is this in part of the EP7 or is it outside?
No. I should add it as a module to EP7, but it's in the future perception management operating system.
What is this 8-step process?
Yeah, 8-step process is this. Are you ready?
Yeah. So wait, what does this do again?
It helps you be in any situation and understand it deeply, create a sustainable value exchange in a solution, and stay resilient even in the absurd situations of people being irrational. Because if you're not empowered enough to handle the absurd, you're not empowered.
Right.
Because absurdity is here for good.
Right.
You got to make peace with the absurdity.
Got it.
Irrational, including, when life throws so many obstacles at you, perfect storms, like suddenly, a cyclone, and then suddenly, crypto collapses and you're deep into it, and all things can happen, and suddenly you lose a loved one who's close, and all of that happens in like a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like seriously, as if that's fair. Well, it's not. And life's not fair. So you got to be able to follow a process to keep the power in you.
Right. So this is what it does.
To keep navigating the absurd.
Okay.
So you come out the other side knowing you're proud of how you're being. All right, you ready?
I'm ready, man.
Number 1, connect fully. Be an observer. Be a sponge. Suspend all judgment. Take in your environment. Because if you're not informed, you have no foundation to get anywhere you want to get to.
So hard to do.
Exactly. It is hard because the brain is going to bug you and go, no, I know what's going on here with the partial data we've already collected. Let me jump to 32 conclusions
about this person.
Just send us on the same trajectory you always do that keeps us the same way.
Okay.
I don't know why I spoke like that. That was very disrespectful.
Yeah.
No, anyway, so connect fully. But it's true. Your first reaction is what most people go, bloody hell, connect fully,
Yeah.
But it does take humility. It does take curiosity and awareness that there's always more data than the data you are decoding. Yeah, look, he's closing his eyes. For those of you not watching.
I was going to use the word patience, but you're right. Curiosity sounds better.
Yeah. But patience is not about sitting on your hands and hoping things will sort themselves out. Patience is a process, believing in a process that if you follow the steps, you'll get the reward. But let the mango ripen. Stop chucking tantrums around the green mango.
I love mangoes.
I know. And I've learned recently that mangoes green are delicious as well. So it's like, oh my God. So much abundance in process.
Yes.
Anyway, connect fully.
Connect fully.
So why did you connect fully? As a foundation, it's to understand first. Before you do anything, understand it first. Stop being trigger happy, trying to be understood prematurely. If you don't know what you're dealing with, how do you know what parts of you is relevant to be understood?
Mm-hmm.
So just understand first, right? It's a beautiful way to serve, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's actually quite noble to say, I'm going to serve you. I'm just going to understand first. But you can't understand first if you're not suspending judgment and assumptions by connecting fully. Step number 3, understand well. Don't just understand first and then hop off thinking you've worked it out prematurely. Stay there longer, absorb more, ask more questions. Try to see how everything interconnects because you will hit genuine ahas that are outside of your original presumptions. Understand well is the discipline of true critical thinking. Go there, go deeper, because you will leverage a much more effective direction if you collect more data and see it interconnect. So understand well.
Okay, I'm going to do a practical application at the end, but okay, continue.
Yeah. Step number 4, repeat the first 3 steps on you. Now that you understand that situation, connect fully to you. Where are you at with it? Be a sponge to your feelings, your thoughts, your assumptions. What prejudices do you have?
Right.
Where are your values and purpose in that situation? Understand well. Like understand now for you first before you launch into a solution, and then understand well where you're at, because how are you going to get to step 5 and create a solution if you don't know what you're dealing with properly and you don't know where you're at with what you stand for properly and where you might be even compromising your own perception that needs solving? Mm-hmm. So then you get to step 5 and now you're in a position to create a solution.
Okay.
But can you see that the first 4 steps are rarely done properly on a good day?
Mm-hmm.
See what I mean? So already you're miles ahead from steps 1 to get to 5, which we all want solutions. We all try to come up with solutions and we wonder why they're not as effective and lasting, right? So then you do the solution, right?
Okay.
Then when you create a solution, you don't know how practical it's going to be until you go to implement it.
Right.
So don't live in the solution for too long. You've already informed yourself enough and you understand what you're dealing with. Come up with something that represents that insight, but now get ready to implement it and start the implementation process, because what will happen is you'll expose everything missing from that solution that prevents it from being implemented so you can finish the solution and make it practical. And you repeat the process. So now, if you're struggling to make it practical, connect fully, understand first, understand well why it's not practical. And then check in with where you're at with how you're complicit in its lack of impracticality, and then revise the solution with improve it so it's practical for implementation.
Okay.
Then you implement it.
Yep.
Step 6 is you're implementing it. Step 7 is allow for obstacles, because no one's perfect, no solution's necessarily perfect, and the world is dynamic and changing. What you just implemented might be now subjected to further changes, or you miss stuff. And so now the world will let you know what you missed.
Right.
Because the solution's impact and the anticipated value of that solution is on show. And if it's only partial, you get to repeat the process, connect fully to the obstacle that's ruining the solution, and understand it first, understand it well, tune into yourself, and then come at it and get ready to revise the solution again beyond the obstacle. Step 8, remain responsible. It does not matter that you did a good job. It does not matter it was a great solution. It doesn't matter you were so logical, so creative with good ideas, because then the world might just pull the rug from underneath you, and everything that should have worked out fine has now been flipped on its head because of a new emerging technology that's outdated half of what you're trying to do, or people who are around that said they'll do their part, suddenly perfect storms knocked them out and they can't deliver what they said they would.
Yep.
So many things can go wrong that are outside of getting it right.
Yeah.
Get ready for it. Repeat the process on it. Renegotiate with people, find other people that are that need to be a part of it, update it with whatever tech you've discovered needs addressing, and go again.
So this applies in which scenario specifically? Wait, there's 3 scenarios, okay? Yeah. So the first is when everything goes to hell. Like you said, your parents die, whatever, everything just goes to hell. You get fired. So that's one. And then the other one
is... what I'm saying is the process is designed so that if that does happen, the process helps you through it.
Helps you through it. Okay, so that's one scenario will help you through. What about dealing with people who are difficult? Like, same?
Connect fully.
Okay, let's go into an example there.
Yeah.
Let's say I had this one guy. He loves Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And, he raves about Donald Trump being a messiah for Jesus.
That's very triggering. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's, all of these things, and he says, oh, he's great that he's there,
Sounds like toxic positivity, but keep going.
But it's very interesting because he is so adamant, and so he keeps ranting about how great Trump is and how he's a messiah because even though then he gave me an example of this prophet not prophet, but someone important back in the day who had prostitutes around him as well. And he turned out to be a messenger for God. And I was like, really? You really want to go down to that level? And then, I don't even want to engage because I don't want to. So in that scenario, I always, for me to, so for you, it's curiosity and wanting to understand this person. For me, it's what will make me feel good in this moment. So I ask him questions like, so what else do you like about Trump? I have to admit, he is able to pivot and he's able to like ricochet a lot of these things. That takes a lot of skill. So I start to look at things that I like and we can bounce off each other based on those characteristics. But when it's coming to talking about him being the Messiah, and they'd rather him be in the office, even though he paid hush money, and he's bullying people and bullying countries with the tariffs and all that. And it's really interesting. Like, how do I even care about or want to? I don't want to change his perception, but I just want to. I don't even know how to deal with this person. I just want to shut off. For me, like I said, I'll turn my boat, let go get something else.
But that might be a genuine solution for you.
Right.
You see, if you connected fully to someone and you looked at why they are operating the way they are,
right.
why they are believing what they do, and you asked enough questions so you understood first, why is he so enamored by Trump and then you stay there long enough, right?
Really?
Right, you stay there.
So you hear this person say, because he's the truth, he just calls the bullshit as it is, and this person will just keep going on.
Yeah, but the point is, your curiosity will direct it where you're trying to understand, where does this all hang together?
Right.
Because you always want to be curious. What makes someone hold on to a position so consistently?
Right.
I'm fascinated by that.
Regardless of whatever this person does.
Exactly. I'm fascinated by that. You're not. But you're allowed not to be.
Right.
So you're allowed to get to a point where you go, oh, this person's interested into believing that someone's all good and that they are like a messiah, when I don't buy that Kool-Aid and I don't even care about why they believe that. So I'm just going to, where am I? Well, I'm at a situation, so this is up to step 4 now, right?
Oh, where am I? Yep,
yeah,
okay, I understand.
where am I at? I'm in a situation where I'll let bygones be bygones. People believe things that are ridiculous, and I just don't care. I just don't care. I just don't agree with them, and I don't need the bullshit confrontation because their perception is so distorted. They just want to be absolute, and I have to be wrong, and I have to be right about something so extreme that doesn't even make sense to me. So I'm just going to be strategically clever in my solution of changing the subject and maybe getting out of that situation. That might be your legitimate solution, right? But you decide that based on your values, your purpose. Now, if that person was really important to you and they're in your life in a very, substantial way, you may choose to invest to go deeper because you know that you both have enough in common.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That they're worth the investment to balance them. And then maybe they'll balance you a little bit because Trump is not all bad and he's not all good. Yeah. So anyone who tries to push any of those extremes is starting to compromise their perception.
Right. So, okay. So then what's step 6, 7, 8 then? Where does that come in?
So your solution will deliver. Right. But if it's not delivering, if suddenly there are obstacles, like he keeps bringing that up, even though you've changed the subject, then you have to come up with another solution.
Right. Keep searching.
And you might tune into yourself and go, all right, where am I at? Well, I want to stay compassionate to this guy. I don't want to be rude.
What do I want to show up as?
Yeah, exactly. What are my values? What are my purpose? And also, how am I being triggered here? Am I thinking Trump is all bad and that's why it's triggering so much?
Am I on a pedestal?
Yeah, you might actually check in with that and go, I don't want that crap. That's not me. And then suddenly you transform yourself and you become different with him.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and then you try that approach where you slow down, you stop being so tense and judgmental, and he feels your energy of warmth and it changes him. Every action has an opposite equal reaction.
I'm starting to understand this opposite reaction thing now. Wow. Okay. Well, that's very interesting.
That's the 8-step process.
It's so funny. I always thought I was a narcissist because I do not have the patience to sit and understand another person because I'm so busy trying to figure out myself. And so when do you know what I mean? When somebody is becoming too difficult, I just turn my oars and I just let go and I go, all right, catch you later. Note to self, don't call this person ever again. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how easy it is for me. But then you become isolated and it's
self-preservation.
Yeah, self-preservation.
Yeah. Look, I believe we're pretty much on the spectrum of everything.
Yeah.
So when you say narcissism, I go, yeah, I'm sure I'm on that spectrum. Everyone's on the spectrum.
Yes, of something.
And what I notice is that we will be extreme on that spectrum in the areas we're struggling the most. and we're a lot less intense in the areas where we're more connected and more in a sustainable value exchange. Because narcissism is really just a label for someone who just feels like they have to prove they're perfect, they have to care about themselves and represent themselves because their environment doesn't. And so they have to perform for the environment, to impress the environment, to hustle in the environment, that they are important.
You're almost describing Andrew Tate.
Yeah, I mean, why don't I gravitate to people like that and care about what they say? I actually agree with some of the stuff he says, but the way he chooses to say it, the way he goes on tangents, it's like you're attention seeking. You're just sensationalizing some good truths that deserve healthy, balanced debate with respectful roundtable, effort. Versus this, I'm going to show pony myself and I am going to hook into the disillusioned young men who are chasing some membership out of their emasculated lives. And I'm going to give them the masculine bravado for them to feel like I'm their savior, that they can be like me.
Yeah.
No, don't go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Don't go from toxic negativity, femininity, to toxic, positivity, masculinity. What?
Yeah, what?
And that's what happens.
And you're right though, because he does. I do feel like he feels like he's being attacked by everyone, and he's always has to defend himself. Like he's always in that state of defense.
Victim.
Yeah, more or less.
That's what happens with extremes. As soon as you go on one side of the extreme,
he's so
you
intense.
get demonized by the other side. Politics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So for example, you've got the water tribe who love water.
Yeah.
And then you've got the desert tribe who hate water. So these people will look at them and go, oh my gosh, you're evil. Yeah. You drown people with your excess water. And these people go, oh my gosh,
extremes.
You're evil. You dehydrate people with your lack of water.
That's how Dune came together. No. Yeah, okay. And then
that was just a made up, absurd, metaphor to show you that everybody looks at the other side for what they don't have or have too much of, and they become evil for that.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
It's like Republicans who love free will and individuality. I love that, right? Mm-hmm. And they fight for that. They fight for your right to say something even though they'll disagree with it, because if you ruin free speech, it's a problem.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But then on the other side, you've got people who just love being there for each other, harmony, collective, like the social fabric of life, So if someone's trying to upset someone, they go, you can't say that. We want to be kind to each other, right? Yeah. But then they take it to the extreme and they start to not be able to control what people say, right? Yeah. But these guys don't validate the value from the other side and say, you know what? We love harmony and community and being there for each other and having tolerance, and we're with you. We have to be creative together and protect individual rights to be able to say, because if we start quashing ideas, then we will stop growing because no one really is a ministry of truth on ideas. But what happens is that these people only focus on what the other side lack, and those people only focus on what these guys lack. And they bash each other with it.
Yeah.
And that's why I struggle to be political. I struggle to be political because that's what I see.
Yeah, it does tear a lot of people apart. It's very divisive, depending on like you say, on the person as well. Like how hard you want to push that topic. But I wanna explore that comment that you made about the spectrums, because the people who are listening probably don't understand. Because I understand what you're saying. You talked about how there's a spectrum of everything. You're crazy, you're insane, you're a murderer, you're whatever. But it's just a different dial for everyone. Everyone's on the spectrum, but they all have different volumes, so to speak. That's right. And
so, for example,
and why is that important to have that perception?
Yeah. So being a sociopath is such a label, right? But if you look at the sociopathic coping, you'll realize that it's someone who feels like everyone is against them. And then they become resolved to they no longer deserve to be loyal to anyone. They can be dishonest and they can manipulate for advantage because everybody's against them.
Right.
Right. So when you look at that, everybody in their vulnerable state where they feel persecuted starts to actually adopt sociopathic coping because they genuinely feel justified, but it's such a low intensity that it doesn't deserve the label of them being a sociopath. You know what I mean? But you go to extremes and then suddenly they hit the label of sociopath because that person has made it their identity, where they are now aware that they don't care and they won't care and they'll never trust and they'll just angle to manipulate everything to their advantage.
So why is it still important though to think about this spectrum, this idea of spectrum? Does it promote forgiveness? What does it do?
It keeps you humble to where you can grow, and for you to look at where that intensity is starting to get less.
Oh, yeah.
It's starting to move towards a more higher intensity that is now causing dysfunction in you. By you seeing it as a dial, you're no longer precious and so absolute in not that. Well, it's like, no, maybe you are that in some areas of your life.
Yes.
Chill out.
Yeah.
Be a work in progress.
Yeah.
Stop trying to jump on a pedestal and say, oh, I'm never that. It's like, when people say, are you calling me a liar? When I hear people say that, I go, oh my God, do you know how easy it is for humans to lie?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we don't even know we're lying. It rolls off the tongue because it's a self-preservation. It's the path of least resistance to make someone look one way while you hide your mistakes, hide your shame, hide something that you feel will cause punishment. It's just a survival coping mechanism. So when someone says, I am not a liar, they're saying that they always say the truth. Anyone who says that is lying.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
So it's very interesting. So for me, the two things I take away from that is, number one, you're just like you say, on the spectrum, different dials, different volumes. You're not who you think you are. Like if you're a sociopath, you're all the way here. You can always dial it down, and and then that will then breed self-compassion, because you go, I've always been like this, but you know what? I can just dial this down. I can work on myself, and it's okay for me to be.
Who signs up to be a sociopath, Azlan?
Yeah.
Who signs up to, look, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a nasty monster? No. Environmental abuse through circumstance and others who have been hurt people. So you end up creating people, and then these people end up creating you hurt people with their hurt.
Yeah.
And it's just, it gets passed on.
And in that scenario where if I'm the abuser, I go, you know what? That was just dialed up too high for me. That doesn't mean that I have all the other, all the other spectrums, all the other characteristics that I can access. I just have to dial this a bit down and forgive myself, and then dial this up a bit more, compassion or love. Like
it becomes a goal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But dialing up and down is what happens when you deconstruct your perception and you get shocked out of the extremes that push you up the dial.
I see what you're saying.
It's not I'm going to move the dial. Yeah. It's I'm going to understand me deeply. I'm going to 8-step myself.
8-step myself. Yeah. That's very useful.
So how do you 8-step yourself? You treat the version you're in as the environment to assess, and then you treat the real you as where are you at with that?
Right.
And you treat that and so when you're checking in with your perception and all that, you're able to go, all right, how am I behaving? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Deconstruct. You're actually following the 8 steps when we do a deconstruct. Notice?
Yes.
We connect fully. What's the first rule of a personal assessment? Suspend judgment, be an observer. We're not assessing the real you, we're assessing the version you're being to see whether any part of it is not truly representing your purpose and values.
What a way to sort of wrap all of this up. I think it was such an interesting journey of our discussions, like how we just pivoted from one to the next, and it's so interesting. I hope the guys, I hope our viewers get a lot from this, because I definitely did. There's so many more things to talk about. I want to talk about people pleasing. I want to talk about the imposter syndrome. I want to talk about, there's so much to talk about. And
people pleasing is huge. We'll definitely play the song I made with AI. People pleaser as part of the
Yeah,
part
we
of the
should talk about
podcast.
that. We do AI and people pleasing because people pleasing for me is something big. As it's funny, somebody concluded at work today that I was last week. That's for people pleasers like you and me, Azlan. So obviously, this just concluded that I'm a people pleaser, and so I'm really interested in dissecting how did you get that from. But it's not hard for me to even see for me to see how she got to that conclusion.
Yeah.
But it's just my nature. But anyway, that's something we can park for the next topic. So I just want to say, man, thanks, George. I hope this setup is great. I mean, I can hear myself. Your volume is so clear.
Oh, good.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing this on the video and putting it up on the podcast. And
Very
so,
cool.
what's this podcast called again?
It's the Reinvent You Show.
Yes.
But we can think about whether whatever we talk about has its own themed brand, but or it's just about reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
In any situation, a perception shift is a reinvention of who you're becoming.
Yeah.
From the old version to the new version. Yeah.
And that question that I asked you is the new Azlan, because I would have not allowed myself not to know what everything was before, because I'm a perfectionist before. So I've really grasped this.
Bravo.
Yeah. This work in progress. If you look up at the ceiling, that triggers me, but I leave it there.
Yeah, but now I've got severe judgment on that with you. Like, you've really let me down.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know what we're looking at, it's a bunch of like eggshells that the thing that dampens the echo.
Soundproofing foam.
The soundproofing foam, and it's all over the place. Some of them have dropped on the floor. Now that used to trigger me, and it still does, but I use it as a lesson to go, look, it's all work in progress.
Yeah. It's so true.
It is so hard. It is the first week I could not come into this room. It was that bad, and I needed to fix it so badly. I was like, I have to fix it, and I said, no, Azlan, you don't have to fix it. I have to tell you another story.
Yeah.
Probably the next topic. But I bought a projector. I bought an inflatable projector outside, and long story short, the projector was so bad in quality. And the kids were all watching.
Is it from Temu or something?
Yeah, it was from Officeworks. It was on sale. It was really bad. And the sound was so terrible. And it was cutting in and out. We were watching Super Mario. And my perfectionism could not allow me to stay there and watch the show. So I had to take myself out. And I said, guys, let's just call it a night. I don't want to watch this show like this. It was we were like 20 minutes in. And then, everybody said, it's okay. We don't mind watching it like this. We like it when it's choppy. It's fine. It's the first experience. It's okay. And I said, no, we can't do this because it's so bad. And so I had to excuse myself. The kids won. And I said, okay, you guys want to do this? And my son was happy playing outside with the bean bags and everything. Yeah. And I walked in and I could not bring myself to go outside. The next day, 7 a.m., I went to JB Hi-Fi. I got a new projector, $800. I got a new everything. The sound thing, just to get just to get that tick off.
But to be fair to you, perfectionism is one thing, but enjoying excellence is another. And so if you have no perfection at all, which means you don't care to take anything to another level that meets your sustainable value exchange, you deserve quality, consistent audio and visual. You deserve that.
Yes.
And you wanted that because that's a value your heart wants. Right. And it wasn't getting delivered.
And I felt bad. And I felt like, this is not my level. This is not my quality.
So you aspired to meet your value exchange goals, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
Right, okay.
When you wanted to tell them what their value exchange was, and they go, no, this is a perfectly fine value exchange for us here. You see? At least you let them have that.
Yeah.
But you respected your own needs.
I had to bounce. My wife said...
Yeah, I would have bounced too. I wouldn't be able to handle that. It's like, yeah, all right, you guys enjoy it. And then I would have just went and done something else because I love audio visual to be quality for me too. So I ain't going to suffer chopping and stuff like that.
It was so painful. My wife, remember, she said, stop being so hard on yourself. I said, I can't believe you're watching this. Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. I mean, it was great. And we had like all the fairy lights. And
I have to say to you, to finish this podcast, we really should talk about when we do a sustainable value exchange, you 8-step to achieve it, right? Because when you get to the solution, it's meant to be a sustainable value exchange, right?
Yes.
But here's the thing. When you're connecting fully and you're undoing your prejudices, it's because it's not about what you think is value to someone else. It's about what they think is value to them. And you need to learn to love and respect what people decide is value, because sometimes people will want things that are so easy for you, it's almost hard for you to rationalize it could be of value.
Yes.
Because it takes no effort for you to deliver that value. So we rob ourselves of abundance and huge returns on our investment when we think blood, sweat, and tears is the currency of a value exchange.
Oh man, that's gold right there.
On that mic drop moment.
Wow, what a way to end the podcast.
Don't drop my mic. It's $700.
No, it's $700. Please don't, George.
Please don't.
No, that was such a great way to end it. Yeah. Anyway, thanks, George, for coming down. For the viewers, please tune in every week. We'll be doing this every week.
Yeah.
Except for next week because I'm in a workshop. But
We'll
the week
miss
after.
every now and then based on life, but generally we're going to be pretty consistent.
That's excellent. All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. And you know where to find us. Cheers, everybody.
Ciao for now. Thank you for joining the Reinvent You Show.
And remember, don't take yourself or life too seriously.
Thank you for joining the Reinvent You Show.
And remember, don't take yourself or life too seriously.